Sanitary District Board of Directors. It's March 29th, 2021 at 7:33. May we have a roll call, please, Tracy?
Okay. Director Boyd?
Here.
Director Decker?
Here.
Director Harvey?
Here.
Director Lohman?
Here.
Director Slater-Carter?
I am present.
So, President's statement, I'll just note we had a meeting on the agenda for last Thursday. We did not achieve a quorum, so we're reconvening tonight in this special meeting. We have one new business item. Do we have any comments from the public on items not on the agenda? Rick?
One quick one. I talked to Recology yesterday, real quick, and the new program with the more bigger boxes and all the recycling stuff is going to start January 1st.
No. It's before January 1st, right?
Well, that's what she said was January.
Well, there's two things that you guys are maybe mixing up. We're talking about keeping the same size green waste container. That service has to start January 1, 2022. Right. But we are also behind the scenes working on the introduction of a medium-sized can that is between the 32 and the 96 gallon can. So a 64 gallon can
40,
as a...
Is it a 41? Anyway.
It could, well, I thought it's the size between, or maybe a 40, maybe it's a 41. Yes, but it's an in-between size that we're thinking about introducing to accommodate folks that are at home right now during COVID, and there's some different garbage habits that we're seeing.
Right,
So
that's what I was talking about. And Rick, I think what you're talking about is where you recycle, where you can put your kitchen waste in your waste.
Then you get the one big can once a week.
Right. And I just want to give credit to Chris Porter, who is on top of this stuff and implementing it without us nagging her. And she's the one who came up with the 40-some gallon can. And we had a chat about it. And I think that's a real show of community service. I think we were lucky to have Recology, and we need to keep them. Oh, and right. Chris cannot retire.
Any other public comment? If not, let's move on to new business item 1, review and consideration of response to notice of violation of the California Voting Rights Act and possible action concerning safe harbor timelines under Elections Code section 10010.
If I'm going to ask Christine to talk about the staff report.
Thank you, Clemens. Thank you, President Boyd. Good evening, directors. This item arises from a notice the district received on February 12th, alleging that the at-large system used to elect the district's board of directors violates the California Voting Rights Act because it is unfair to minority voters and suppresses minority vote turnout. The notice was sent by attorney John Sarsfield, claiming he represents registered voters who reside in the district and threatened to file a lawsuit unless the board transitions to a by division system. You'll hear me use division and district sort of interchangeably, but the health and safety code that governs sanitary districts refers to it as a by division system. As the board is aware, under the current system, voters are permitted from the entire district to elect all 5 directors to the board. In contrast, in a by division system, the district would be divided into 5 geographical locations, one for each board seat, so that residents within each division only vote for candidates residing in their district or division. Upon receipt of the notice, I contacted Mr. Sarsfield to ascertain the identity of his clients, the minority class of voters he represented, and his factual support of the alleged violation, but he declined to provide any such information. Therefore, the district has been unable to assess the validity of the claims. A violation of the California Voting Rights Act, it's also, the acronym is CVRA, occurs when the electorate votes in a racially polarized manner. This happens when a minority class of voters that this happens when a majority class of voters that regularly defeats the choice of a minority class causes the minority class the inability to participate in the political process and elect its preferred representative. The CVRA expanded the protections of minority voters afforded under the 1965 Federal Voting Rights Act, and as such made it claims less difficult to successfully litigate against public agencies. Moreover, the CVRA also included a provision that allowed successful litigants to recover their attorney's fees and costs, which are quite substantial in most cases. In an effort to afford public agencies the chance to voluntarily change its election system without having to litigate or incur additional legal costs, the California legislature enacted amendments known as the safe harbor provisions. So before a lawsuit can be filed, a plaintiff must first serve a violation notice on the agency, which is what happened in this case. And the agency then has 45 days to make a decision to transition to a by-division system without being sued. If the agency complies, it then has another 90 days to actually complete the transition by holding 5 public hearings, the purpose of which is to engage residents in the decision of how to redistrict. Likewise, during this process, the agency cannot be sued and attorney's fees are capped at $30,000. The safe harbor provisions constitute the process that would occur under normal circumstances. However, in March and April of last year, by virtue of his powers under the California Emergency Services Act, the Governor Newsom paused or suspended the running of both the 45-day and 90-day safe harbor periods during the pandemic. Without the suspension of these timelines, the rationale is that the electorate could be disenfranchised from participating in such significant decisions that are so fundamental to their voting rights. To date, no proclamation terminating the state of emergency has been issued by the governor, and no resolution of the legislature has declared it at an end. Accordingly, by its own terms and under the Emergency Services Act, the executive order suspending the timelines remain in effect. One other thing, failure to obey an executive order issued under the Emergency Services Act is a misdemeanor. Despite the governor's exercise of his emergency powers, there has been one legal challenge to his authority to issue the suspension order. The city of Folsom, in reliance on the orders, declined to pass the initial resolution of intent to transition within 45 days of receiving a violation notice. The plaintiff sued. Recently, the Sacramento Superior Court upheld the validity of those orders, noting that the suspension of the safe harbor timelines is necessary to protect the community's essential right to fully participate in person in the CVRA process while safeguarding their health and safety during a global pandemic. The court further concluded that the decision of whether to suspend the timelines is not discretionary by a local jurisdiction, but indeed it's mandatory, citing the provisions of the Emergency Services Act. Mr. Sarfield asserts that his demand letter triggers the running of the 45-day litigation hold, which expires today, thereby disregarding the governor's orders tolling the safe harbor timeframes. However, because of the current suspension orders, it is only the lifting of those orders that triggers the 45-day timeline. So in other words, once the orders, I'm sorry, I'm referring to them because there's two, but the one pertains to us. Once the orders are lifted, the 45 days would begin to run, and the district will need to decide whether to transition to by division elections if it wishes to take advantage of the safe harbor provisions. So what is being presented to the board for consideration this evening is two options. The first is to disregard the governor's order suspending the 45 days to adopt a resolution of intention to transition to by division election system and then proceed with the public hearings, or two, comply with the suspension of timelines under the governor's order until such time as the order is lifted. One other thing I wanted to mention is that the district is not required to take action to invoke the governor's orders, but the orders are effective without action by the district is what I was trying to say. But my recommendation is that the board openly consider and take action formalizing its decision to suspend the timelines if that's what the board chooses to do. I'm happy to take any questions. That completes my summary of the staff report.
Well, I think you just said that there is a case in Folsom that, that we can comply with what we think the governor's order really means without additional cost or court cases. Is that true? Is that what you were saying?
Based on the Superior Court's rationale, yes, the order stands, and if we choose to rely on it, it would suspend those timelines until the order is lifted. The Superior Court ruling is not legally binding authority, so conceivably a plaintiff could still sue us like the plaintiff did in Folsom, sue the city saying you can't rely on the order, it's unconstitutional, it's not valid. Court said, no, it is valid. You can rely on it. I'm not sure I answered your question directly. No, I mean, a San Mateo County Superior Court judge could rule the same or different. But I think the court's rationale in Sacramento was compelling and persuasive.
I would add that I was intrigued and actually impressed by the Superior Court's ruling because they were basing it on the public's need to be able to participate in the process that would have such a big impact on their right to vote and their right to select their elected representatives. And the court strongly favored the representative process and the public participation process. And I find that refreshing to hear from a court in 2021. I find myself often in disagreement with Superior Court rulings and eagerly await overturning them on appeal as they're taken up. But this one actually got my attention. I sat up straight when I saw the wording. This appears to me to be a very good ruling, and I fully intend to support doing as it says and treating it as not discretionary and treating the governor's suspension order as the ruling order of the day. Rick?
Is there any, is it advisable or is it mandatory that we communicate something to the attacking attorney and tell him within the 45 days, at least have a formal statement to him, here's what we're doing?
I certainly would advise that.
I mean, it makes sense to tell him what we're doing, then we have a record
Agreed.
of what we're doing.
Yep. Certainly.
Any other comments or questions from board members?
I think that, let me see, I am not muted. I think that we have a choice of somebody who wants to sue us or following the accepted ruling about public health and public participation by the governor. I go with the governor. He doesn't have any self-interest in this.
Rick?
For the public, I think I've heard that if we said just, yes, we're going to go to divisions, it's much, much more than the $30,000 because there's a special election and all these other things that have to occur. Do we have an estimate of what that's going to cost the community if we do that?
That's a very good question, Rick, because there's a whole lot of costs that this letter have brought up for this district. And when people start complaining about our rates, I'll let Christine get onto the ones we know about, but in talking to a member of the Harbor District Board, apparently the election costs every other year are going to skyrocket as well because it costs the elections office more to do district elections.
I'd just add that one of the things, I mean, let me tick off a few and then Christine can clean up for the ones I forgot, but it involves hiring a demographer to take a look at the district, to recommend things to the board for how the map might be drawn.
And that rough cost, Scott, is?
We'd probably put it in the $25,000 to $30,000 range as a minimum. And then depending on how many revisions we decided to put the maps through, it could go up from there. The maps have to be drawn. We have to have a series of board meetings that are going to be designed to elicit public participation. Our attorney would be necessarily very busy during this time. And of course, our staff would as well. But that's not the end of it. Catherine's absolutely correct that the cost of division elections are higher because there's more work for county elections to handle that. But it's also every 10 years, any district election district has to reapportion. So it has to go get the census data, work with the demographer again, go through all the same process of getting the maps redrawn to accommodate what's happened in the local population. And that's not free. So there are a set of recurring costs as well as the initial cost. Plus, there's the $30,000 amount that the complaining lawyer is almost certainly likely to be able to collect. So that's your baseline. So take your 30, add in another 20 or 30 to make it 50 or 60, and it is just only going to go up from there. So This is something that has such substantial financial impact. I'm looking forward to looking into the question. I think the question is very interesting and important for our community. But I appreciate that we're going to have a little bit of time to maybe educate ourselves on this before we need to take action because the governor has told the matter. Peter?
I think just holding up the inevitable. We eventually have to go to that, not at large, the process, but to the division process. but holding it up is a good thing. But on the other hand, why don't we just send a letter to the attorney saying we will comply? So as to cut him off in legal fees.
Well, we haven't met to discuss the matter, but Peter, I don't agree with your starting position. So I would want to discuss that with you at some length before we simply capitulated.
I think there is some data, I think, that we need to look at. I think a countywide election, and for those of you who don't know me all that well, I worked on getting the Board of Supervisors to have district elections. They were the last Board of Supervisors in the state to have district elections, but it had been pretty obvious that San Mateo County was run out of the halls of Daly City. And all of the folks who were picked, I watched the selections of several appointments of members of the Board of Supervisors, and people were picked by their approval from Daly City. That said, we are not county-wide, and every election that is contested, the candidates are out walking and talking to people about what they like, what they don't like, and what they need to see. In the years I've done this, nobody has said, I feel discriminated against, I can't run because I'm Asian or Black or Hispanic or any other one of the gay or any other one of the protected classes. And we have had representation on this district. So I'd like to see the real numbers first. Being a basic data person, not that I can put them together, but I can read.
Peter, I'd offer this, because I've been thinking about this really hard since the letter came in, and working with Christine and Catherine and Clemens to try to prepare materials so we could even make any recommendations to the board. The questions come to my mind. If you take the Pillar Ridge community, which is definitely demographically substantially composed differently than most of the rest of the Montara Water and Sanitary District, I'm reminded of when Catherine and I were last down there knocking on doors during a campaign season. And it's odd for us to be talking about campaigns at the board level, because here we're here to do the business of the community, not to campaign for ourselves. But I am going to draw on this campaign experience to tell you that, we met and talked with quite a few people at Pillar Ridge, and it was good. It was really good. Just as it was good, knocking doors up on Buena Vista or down on Reef or back in the tree streets here in Montara. I mean, we knocked doors all over town, both towns. And, there's a lot of people, if you're watching on PCT, I hope you know that the Pillar Ridge community is part of Moss Beach and part of our community. Those of us who've campaigned know that, because we've knocked doors there. We've met the people and talked with them. And if it hadn't been for the need to campaign, I don't know if I would have gone down there and knocked on doors. Well, so imagine that we went to district elections. I live in Montara. It's very likely I would not have Pillar Ridge in my district. Would I have gone and knocked on those doors? Pragmatically speaking, you know how much time it's going to take to knock doors. You're going to partition your time because you're doing all this in your free time to try to reach out to people. We'd only knock doors in the district that would be helpful for that campaign. Typically, that's how that would normally work. I don't think I would have met those fine folks in Pillar Ridge if it hadn't been for district-wide elections. And I've had them on my mind and heart for years. When we spent all the time looking at acquiring the Pillar Ridge water system, that whole time it was with knowledge of people that we had met there. And I'm not willing to just jump to the conclusion that in a district of our size, where it's literally possible to knock on doors from the north end to the south end of the district and actually meet people all across the district, that individual district elections are really a better way for the community to be served. I certainly believe that that's very likely the case at the county level or even at like the fire district level. But when you get this small, I don't believe that's what this law was really about. So I want to get to the heart of the real question behind the CVRA and the FVRA, the federal, and ask, is there some imbalance that we might need to do something about and could do something about? I want to really get to the heart of that. And I've started digging into the data, and I'm looking forward to talking to a demographer and whoever else we can to really dig into this. Because if I've been taking for granted that some of my neighbors have been getting good representation, but they haven't, then I want to do what I can to set that right. So,
and I will add, Scott, we need to do it right. What this has brought up is we have a whole lot of low-income people living in $1.5 million houses that they bought for $50 or $60 or $100,000. We need to look at all of the data and make sure that we're not trading discrimination for discrimination against other people. This has to be done very fairly. And I remember the people who came to us when we had to put that annual charge on and said, this is going to be really, really, really tough. And we represent the whole district.
So Peter, it looks like you had more to say.
If we're going to be sued anyhow down the road, how are we going to defend ourselves then? Because it's the law that we are supposed to be choosing by division, not at large. I mean, Scott has tried to explain to us how it is that he would argue the matter, but it is a big question mark if we get through with that argumentation.
Well, at this point, Peter, having read through what the law requires, it's not clear to me that the issue that the law is trying to address would be addressed through this action that the Safe Harbor Amendment brings to it. And I'm not interested in taking the Safe Harbor if it would actually harm a community that is the community that is intended to be helped. So I'm grateful that we have some time to examine the issue more carefully. You may see me, in a matter of time saying, hey, let's go to district elections, but I want to know more about it than I do now. And I've started looking at numbers, and I'm not at all convinced that the default action called for under the Safe Harbor is a good one for the people of our community. And I'm here to work for them first. So I'm grateful that the issue has been raised because now we get to look at it. I wasn't looking at it before, but now that we are, I intend to do as thorough a job of looking at it as I can so that when it comes time to act one way or the other, I know why I would, I need to have a basis for why I'm going to take it may be a hard decision either way. I grant you that.
I feel comfortable with taking some more time to look at the issue, but once the issue is over, meaning the governor decides that he's going to take that safe harbor away and the 45 days starts kicking, we will be faced again with that decision, this time hopefully then with more information to know how to go forward.
Well, I fully intend to take advantage of the time that we have to get more information. And I strongly recommend that we lay what groundwork we can, because, honestly, the way the Safe Harbor law is written, it's not designed to give agencies time to learn enough to make an informed decision about whether they're going to comply. It's designed to have large agencies who don't care about $30,000 that you're going to have to pay to the opposing attorney to just roll over and just do what they're going to need to do anyway. But the law wasn't written with small districts like ours in mind. And I think it could actually disenfranchise people. And if it's going to do that, I may be in favor of going and talking to a judge about that issue. I have a lot to learn before I draw any conclusions, but I'm not counting that out. And I also understand I'm one of 5 on this board. You know, my voice is not going to prevail unless enough of the board sees it the same way. But I'm going to dig into this. I've already started digging, and I'm super interested in it. Jim?
Based on our population size for our district, what Scott Rafferty and Chris, what is the legal opinion at this point as to whether we are bound or included in this law? I mean, I guess you're saying that we should take action and have plans anyway, but based on your, Scott and Chris, right now, what is based on our small population size, is there a chance that we will be skipped on this law?
I think maybe what you're asking, Director Harvey, is what are our chances of prevailing if
this would be a closed session item. This would be for a closed session, right?
Yes, this would be.
Oh, I'm sorry. We're not closed session.
Yeah.
No.
It's a great question, though, Jim. I'm not disagreeing with that. So it's
if we could we have a pretty narrow decision tonight, either to elect to transition or comply with the order, give us the governor's order, and take some more time to the next point. Like Director Decker, you pointed out, once the order is lifted, we'll have to make our decision within 45 days at that point. So do we do that now, or do we wait until the governor lifts his order? Certainly, as I pointed out during my presentation and in the staff report, the plaintiffs could decide to sue us if we rely on the governor's orders. So there is that possibility of a lawsuit on that ground alone.
Rick?
I'll make the motion, I don't know how you want to phrase it, to take the extra time period right now. So rather than make an immediate decision to go to divisions.
I'll second that. Oh, did you second that, Peter?
So that's
You're before me.
motion. Catherine, I got it. So Rick made the motion. Peter did the second. Catherine came in with the third. So I'm scrolling through.
Yeah.
So I do want to highlight, it's been moved and seconded that we approve the resolution declaring the intention to suspend Elections Code Section 10010 Safe Harbor timelines for transitioning from at-large to by-division elections pursuant to Executive Orders numbers N3420 and N4820. I want to draw your attention to, if you haven't had a chance to read the staff report carefully, the staff does recommend that we engage in public outreach and engagement designed to go ahead and bring the community into this conversation now, in anticipation of, well, I mean, as Peter has pointed out, this issue will be upon us. So let's draw the public in now while we have the opportunity to help everyone become familiar with it and start considering the ramifications. Any further discussion?
Nope.
If not, Tracy, could we have a roll call, please?
Okay. Director Boyd,
Aye.
Director Decker,
Aye.
Director Harvey,
Aye.
Director Lohman,
Yes.
Director Slater Carter.
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes 5-0. Thank you, Christine. Thank you. This is a complicated issue to present, and I appreciate the clarity that you brought to the matter. Rather comprehensive as well. We have no reports. we have a couple of items on the future agendas, the CSDA Transparency Certificate and the Conflict of Interest Code update. Anything else that we want to get on there?
I see we have a draft budget as well on the next agenda.
So that will be up on Thursday night's meeting, right, Clemens?
Thursday night, yeah.
Yes, it's already scheduled.
Okay, great. And for those of you watching, we do have a meeting Thursday night as well. So be happy if you join us. With that, we're going to take a brief recess and then reconvene in closed session for one matter of existing litigation and one matter of anticipated litigation. And if we take Clemens?
We have, yes, thank you. That's it.
And if we take any action, we will report that out after we come out of closed session. And with that, we thank the public for attending, and we look forward to seeing you next time.